call a special meeting of the Board of Trustees of East Central Independent School District being held on January 16, 2024, beginning at 5:32 p.m. in the Student Service Center. Madam Secretary, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Lydia Carter,
I'm here.
Linda Frisenhunt, Victor Garza, James Wilkie,
Here.
Robert Jones here, Monique Freitas, John Messingale.
Here.
Here, okay.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. We'll move on to prayer and pledge. Mr. Scott, who do we have tonight?
Mr. McKay.
Yes, sir. If y'all would please just bow your heads. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for the gift of today, Lord. We thank you for the opportunity to serve this great community. Thank you, Lord, for our trustees and their dedication and commitment to ISD. We ask that you bless this meeting and that it be pleasing to you, Lord. We just ask that you continue to provide us wisdom and discernment as we make decisions for the district. We ask that you provide a hedge of protection around our students and staff. But please be with all of us as we travel home from tonight's meeting safely. And it's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right. Item 4, public comments.
No public comment.
No public comments. All right, with that, we'll move on to why we're here. Board workshop, athletic facility assessments. Mr. Scano.
Yes, sir. So trustees, just by way of kind of a walk back in history a little bit here to 2016. As part of the 2016 bond, the bond planning committee had identified several needs, most of which were academic facilities that needed renovation, as well as the construction of Tradition Elementary School. But during that study, they discovered that there were several concerns that they had about our athletic facilities, specifically the amount of space, proximity to fields, the condition of the furniture and lockers, as well as some lack of shower facilities in some instances, lack of laundry facilities in some instances. Fast forward to the bond, the athletic findings were not part of the bond referendum. The board in 2016 was able to allocate some fund balance dollars during that time to do some initial renovations of those facilities here at the high school. And so while the bond construction program was happening and we had contractors and architects mobilized, we did take the liberty during that time with fund balance, separate from the bond, to retrofit several of the existing facilities, relocate several of the programs into existing facilities. We added an additional field house for football. We converted basically what was used as a temporary library when the high school was being renovated and converted it to a freshman field house so that we had a JV varsity field house and now a separate freshman field house. We added laundry facilities there, and again, relocated lockers used athletic lockers into PE lockers in Gym 3 to add some additional locker room space for our growing programs, and that's our current condition today. Between then and the 2020 bond referendum, we did also have LPA do an initial review of the stadium, we being the board at the time, because there were also some concerns with some ADA accessibility. We received some complaints from citizens that they did not have accessibility to different areas of the stadium. So we had an initial review at that time. The findings were very clear, as we suspected. There are ADA accessibility issues at the stadium. There are some safety issues with the condition. And so when the bond did not pass in 2020, the board at the time decided to kind of just shelve that. Let's work on the facility needs for academics. So here we are in the bond construction program. So over the last several months, we had LPA come back in, work with our athletic staff to evaluate the condition, not only at the stadium, but all of our athletic facilities that serve all of our programs here at the high school, as well as both junior highs. And so today, we have Eric from LPA here. Of course, we have our athletic director here, Ms. Ariola. They've been hard at work, kind of reviewing at a high level the condition of all the facilities. And what they're really looking at is, from a maintenance standpoint, is their condition still salvageable? Which facilities or which fields, et cetera, tracks are reaching their end of life? We looked at ADA accessibility and safety. So without getting too deep in uncovering and unearthing the condition, just what can you see that is very obviously safety and ADA related concerns? And then from a programmatic standpoint, is it optimal? Is the parking optimal? Is the condition of the facilities optimal, given the number of kids that we're serving in a 6A program, sport to sport to sport, boys to girls, et cetera? And is it optimal in the sense of also where the locker rooms facilities are located and where the practice facilities are located, or competition facilities are located? Does it make sense, right? Because what we have essentially done in the history of East Central High School is kind of, as we grew, we just retrofitted something and made it fit an athletic facility where maybe it was a classroom before, maybe it was a PE locker room, and now we converted it to a full athletic facility. And so we just made adequate happen, but we wanted to have a sense of what is our real circumstance right now, and are there opportunities for the board to consider engaging the public in a more in-depth conversation around where are we, where do we think we need to be, and what is it going to take to get there. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric from LPA to provide the board an overview of what they've discovered and what recommendations our athletic staff along with LPA have for the board to be aware of.
Wonderful. Thank you. A lot of what we're going to look at today is the 2 sheets of larger format paper, printed out a little larger so they're easier to read, but they are included there in the bound document. The overall bound document is our athletic facility assessment that we conducted. We worked with, I think as Mr. Toscano mentioned, the athletic department as well as the facility teams, understanding the physical repairs and conversions that have been made. I think one of the most notable is the freshman locker room, which was just done as part of the original school, used for classroom spaces, then was converted to a library, eventually converted into a locker room. So it's not a purpose-built athletic facility, and that's something we've seen sort of across the district through here. So with our team, we went through looking at the executive summary. I'm going to sort of summarize this here, but feel free to read in a little deeper into it there as well. We conducted a visual assessment that tackled many of those issues. We did not conduct any testing. We weren't doing testing of light levels or anything like that, but we were assessing the facilities for 4 items, or excuse me, 3 categories, and we labeled them with a red dot, blue dot, red dot, and yellow dot. The blue dot is maintenance and operation items. Some of those are items that may be addressed by the facilities team. The large majority of those are end-of-life issues for those items. For example, at the middle school, the track surfaces are starting to delaminate due to age. That's a maintenance and operations issue. However, as it progresses with the end of that sort of track surface, those being 10 to 20 years old now, will turn into a safety issue as that continues to delaminate and create tripping hazards on the track. The red noted items are code related. Many of those items are ADA, but a number of those items are also IBC, ICC 300, which is the bleacher code, and really benchmark to current codes, building codes for this area. When these facilities were built, many of them were built up to code. Many of the conversions and adaptations that have been done since were up to code when they were built, but codes have changed some since those times, and they've been updated as well as the changing occurrences of time on those buildings. The last item is identifying yellow, and that's the program issues. Many of those are they fitting the needs of the teams? Are they located where they need to be? And is the playing surface, there is a playing surface there. In Gym 3 here on campus, for example, there are hoops and there's a surface, but that flooring surface is not nearly the same quality of a varsity athletic program, similar to what you have in your competition gym. So very different playing surface. One's a PE surface, one's an athletic playing surface, and the difference of those would fall under a program requirement issue through there as well. So that's what we've noted. We also noted here in the report the number, the sports that are currently on campus, as well as with the elevation to 6A, the possible future sports. So as we think of these items, looking long-term, not just progressively fixing some of these individual issues. So that's a general executive summary of that entire ballot document you have that really digs into every individual component of the athletic facilities that we evaluated. Any questions at that level before we jump into sort of the next page? So following the assessment and review of the report with the facilities and the athletic department team, we met with athletics and took an initial approach at looking at the issues that we identified and identifying potential projects broken down by campus. So as we see here on the screen and on that second piece of paper you guys have, we have potential projects broken down by on the high school campuses and then the middle school campuses that are following. These are listed in a general priority item that was developed by the athletic department in what they initially see their greatest need and greatest potential there for repairs. So we're going to go through and review these. The brief descriptions, and that is intentional. This was an existing conditions assessment that we conducted of the facilities. This effort was not a design effort into a long-term master plan or a necessary bond preparation. It is really just assessing the needs, and we're identifying them here. So with that, the first priority you identified is at the main stadium, right out here, and identifying the stadium bleachers, press boxes, associated construction, including the home and visitors concession, storage, field lights, and scoreboard on there as well. The main issues there include ADA code as well as safety, primarily at the visiting side bleachers with the safety issues. Many of those issues are similar at the visiting and the home team, but they're exacerbated at the visiting side just due to the condition and age of that structure. Due to not having the accessibility at either of the press boxes or either of those grandstands, as well as some code issues of the location of buildings underneath grandstands that aren't fire rated, having a separation that is current code through there. We have included effectively every portion of the stadium outside of the playing surface, so the track and the field, into that project. Because as soon as we touch one, we're going to trigger code implications that are going to require improvements to associated construction around them. So improving the press boxes would trigger improving the bleachers, which would trigger the buildings underneath. So there's a lot of effects that would trigger through there. That's why that's grouped into a larger project there. The second proposed project here would be a new construction building located somewhere here on campus that would look to solve a lot of the issues that were identified and consolidate a lot of the solutions into a single project rather than having piecemeal projects throughout the campus. So this facility we're calling a field house building for the outdoor athletics which would include locker room, weight room, offices, team rooms, as well as practice facilities there. That would be included. There are many locations we can look at on campus, and that'll be part of the master planning effort. But the hope for that structure is it will solve a number of the locker issues, the coaches' offices, which are currently all distributed across campus, not always where their respective sports fields are, as well as with the balance of coaches' offices and locker rooms. If there are co-ed, or if there are coaches that don't match the gender of their athletes, then there are supervision issues currently in the locker rooms, and there's no meeting or teaching space for those coaches to meet with their team, with except outside or looking at some of the academic spaces. So that's what where the teaming was used, the coaching rooms outside of the locker room facilities. The third item here is the tennis facility over on Cass campus. As I'm sure many of you are aware, there have been continuing issues and improvements over there at the tennis facility, trying to maintain that existing court surface in a playable and safe fashion. The ultimate solution for that, rather than doing yearly improvements of that surface, is to redo those tennis courts entirely. In addition to that, we are also noting improvements to the athletes, coaches, and fan facilities over there. There are currently no fan facilities for restroom or concessions over there. There's limited to no storage within that building as well. So most of the locker rooms are utilized for storage, and what were initially intended as athlete restroom facilities are used by the public, creating that overlap, which is ill-advised in general. The fourth priority item here is softball access improvements, including parking, pathways, restrooms, concessions, and fencing. So you'll notice that there's two softball items here, number 4 and number 5, that are broken up here. We broke them separately into two items. The first one is softball access and improvements that I just outlined. That is, the current facility is not ADA accessible due to the sidewalk slopes, and there's a section of sidewalk missing, so it's not a stable surface to access through there. There's also no parking in the general facility. The closest parking for that is over here in the stadium lot in front of Gym 2 in the stadium. So accessibility over there is a main concern, as well as long-term concerns about the fencing, ticketing, restrooms, and concession, which are all temporary facilities over there at the moment. The second item of softball really ties into the item below it as well at the football field, would be improving the softball and baseball fields, utilizing artificial turf, drainage improvements, batting cages and practice facilities. There were a number of items identified at both fields that fall into safety as well as maintenance. Those fields, while they have been maintained over the years, as well as can be expected, are experiencing grading issues. So holes and humps within the playing surface, which create tripping hazards through there, as well as are issues that become harder and harder to maintain as those times go on, as well as being able to maintain those grass fields, especially with limited water use at times for those areas. So those two items are tied together primarily due to the Title IX considerations. If improving a men's facility or women's facility needs to meet the same qualifications there, same standards there as well. The next item would be a new primary competition gymnasium, primarily to increase the seating capacity, improve accessibility, and increase storage for those areas. The existing competition gymnasium that you have centrally located at campus is a great facility with a wonderful playing surface that was just recently finished. The capacity is really the issue there. Due to its location, it's hard to create a renovation on that project to expand capacity for a school of this size. And so increasing that, building a new competition gymnasium, which could also function as a multi-use practice gymnasium elsewhere on campus, in possible replacement of another gym or located elsewhere on campus is that project, really trying to increase the capacity to meet the needs of the district. The next one is really a follow-up to many of the improvements before it, and it's the renovation and reorganization of locker rooms across the campus. That is more than likely a smaller scale renovation project in order to, some of the previous projects before it may address some of the major needs, but there will still be lingering needs for all of the programs, the 16 athletic teams across campuses. Would then have the opportunity, as one team would move out, to improve those spaces and locate them appropriately across campus and bring them up to code as well. Next issue is Gymnasium 2, accessibility and age of the facility. I think as you read into the facility assessment, you'll understand that the most serious and probably the largest number of issues of a single facility outside of the stadium is Gymnasium 2. The condition of the building, as well as the use and accessibility to it. There's an entire second floor to that building that has no accessibility at all, that is used for coaches' offices as well as weight room facilities for students. So anybody with accessible needs is not able to use that entire floor of the building as well. There are heating and HVAC concerns as well as surfacing concerns on the primary gymnasium and a number of accessibility issues throughout the rest of the building. It's one of the older gyms there. So that, looking at either improvements, large-scale improvements to that existing gymnasium or possible replacement of that would be that project as well. The third to last one here, new golf practice facilities. There are currently no golf practice facilities here on campus. The golf team has to go off campus in order to practice to any extent. Many comparable districts in the area have small-scale golf practice facilities, whether that be a simulator, putting greens, hitting cages. Many of those are available on campus, and it's a relatively small impact item that would allow those athletes to stay on campus. Second to last one is a secondary practice gymnasium renovation to match competition quality. I think I've noted both in Gymnasium 2 and Gymnasium 3, the surfaces, the playing surface in those is not an athletic competition quality wood floor. They are PE style sport courts. So bringing up a secondary practice gym so all athletes can practice on a safe and similar athletic surface to the game day gym it would be a priority for that as well. Lastly, on the high school aspect is an auditorium. That falls similar into the golf practice facility. Currently, the swim and dive team are not on campus, so having to move to the other aspects. With that prioritization, there's a lot of consideration taken into that where you guys don't currently have an auditorium, but is how many athletes that is serving, where it helps understand where it falls in with the priority on this list. Before we jump to the middle schools, any questions about those projects? I know that was a lot running out there.
Let me ask you a question about the age of the bleachers that are there. Do you know the age of those bleachers?
I don't know the exact year myself. Is there any other knowledge in the room about those? I know the visiting side is an older system than the.
Right. Are they using those bleachers anymore? Then I ask you that question. The bleachers that we have, are they using them in any new facilities that they're building?
The visiting side, no. That style of bleacher has not been installed in probably the past 25 years.
Okay.
In terms of the structural system,
Right.
and many of those have come through end of life and have been removed. I'm sure out there are similar bleachers that are being used, but at large, we don't see very many of those.
Back to the press box.
Yep.
Did you do access, the stability of that press box? It sways for safety purposes. Have you do?
We did no structural assessment as part of this.
Oh, you didn't? Okay.
On the visiting side, where there were those structural concerns, I think as it was evaluated previously, there was a structural assessment that deemed it safe at least at the time of that structural assessment. That was, refreshed 2 years ago at this point. Is that
Probably closer to three.
possibly
Or
3
2,
years
3
ago?
years ago.
So that was the latest structural assessment on the visiting side.
Okay.
There are, those bleachers move if you walk out even just a couple people, and many of the other issues are seat planks coming up and how those attachments, the railings that are no longer to code, the run of the stairs are code. There's very little to those bleachers that I think would meet current standards or codes for that, but we did not include a structural assessment as part of this.
Thank you. Let me ask, Mr. Costello, if we do any renovation to the press box, what I understand is that we are grandfathered because we haven't done any work on that for an elevator. If we do any renovation to that press box, would that have to be included?
Yes, sir. So once you start to get into any kind of renovation there, then you gotta bring it up to current code. And so it would require an elevator, accessibility to code. But as Eric mentioned earlier, when you mess with the press box, then you're gonna have to address the bleachers as well. And if you address the bleachers, then you're gonna have to address the structures underneath the bleachers, like the concession stands, and storage facilities, et cetera. So this is why he mentioned earlier that outside of the field and the track, it's pretty much, if you start messing with any of it, it all needs to be addressed because not any of it meets current code.
We wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but one option for that is we could look at a visiting side and address that. However, the only way to make that work with the press boxes is to not have a visiting side press box. We could take that down and redo those bleachers and not have to address the press box across on the home side. That would reduce program capacity for the district, not having location for visiting coaches and media on that side. So,
Okay, well, my point is, how do we get by,
How did we before?
how are we gonna get by renovating the press box and the bleachers without coming to compliance?
We're not,
We can't,
yeah.
so it has to go. Okay.
it's gotta go.
That's what I'm trying to find out. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, this first line item, anything at the stadium here, if we're not talking renovation, we're talking new projects.
Okay,
So
now.
we're taking
I'm
away
good.
rebuilding.
Okay, thank you.
No, there's no more flags on. We're not prepared. We're gonna.
Right, that's what I'm looking at. We're not putting the Band-Aid on.
No, there's not a big enough Band-Aid.
Gotcha. Sounds good. Okay.
Any other questions about that project at the high school? All right. At the middle school campuses, the two campuses, Legacy and Heritage, are very similar. So a lot of the issues that were identified at one are identical at the other. So we prioritize those into 5 items through there. The first being the athletic flooring in the gymnasium to match competition quality. Currently, one of the gymnasiums has a sport court, similar to what I've mentioned here with Gym 2 and 3. That's an unequal sort of playing surface. One had a retrofit relatively recently to a wood floor system. To create parity across the middle schools, including the new one, would the first priority there would be to upgrade the athletic flooring surface in the gymnasiums. The second one is track repairs, primarily due to end of life, as I mentioned before. Those track surfaces are delaminating, so they'll be unusable in a number of years as that delamination continues. There's no real repair for that other than scraping in and doing a full resurface of that once it starts to heal. Next is tennis court replacements. Very similar at the middle school to what's happening at the high school is extensive cracking, low spots that are holding water, as well as issues of tension on the poles on many of the middle school courts, making the net not function properly. The last two are our two options that may go hand in hand, may be looked at separately. The first priority is looking at the natural grass fields and overhauling them. Keeping grass growing on those has been quite difficult over the years. So they're not a proper grass system. Not having a grass system, not only are the kids playing on a harder dirt surface, it is a safety issue, not having a proper grass section there for an athletic surface to play, tackle football or soccer on for those as well. So really, one option would be to revitalize those natural grass surfaces within the football, within the track area, as well as the practice fields that surround the track and field at each of those campuses. And an additional option there would be to look at the areas within the track areas and replace the natural grass turf with artificial turf, making it a comparable playing surface to some of our other campuses, and continuing a similar playing surface from our middle schools to the high school, so there's not that change as they graduate up into the high school. So those are the potential items there. At the middle schools, there were a couple other major items that we didn't include on the priorities list. Those gymnasiums were not constructed at a competition height. So those roofs and ceiling trusses are about 3 to 5 feet too low to have a regulation high school game there per National Federation of High School regulations. But we did not include that in the priority here, campus. One, understanding that it's not a high school level competition facility, and two, just understanding the impact of raising the roofs on 2 gymnasiums or 4 gymnasiums across the 2 campuses may not be a realistic project at this point.
Could you clarify that it's not regulation height at the middle school gymnasium?
Neither of the middle school gymnasiums.
What is the regulation height?
For basketball, it's 23 feet clear. For volleyball, it's 25 foot clear. Those gymnasiums, it's sloping structure, but range in between approximately 19'6" to 21 feet tall.
So what you're saying is, we could not have high school games at those campuses?
In general, yes. Meaning high school games that meet regulation. Basketball, it's possibly a little less of an issue. Volleyball is a significant issue, which I think was noted with the practicing in those gymnasiums and playing in those gymnasiums while the surfacing of the competition gym is done.
Thank you.
So it's acceptable for middle school since it's not a high school competition,
Right,
so
yeah.
it was noted that they were not.
Regulation.
The regulation.
All right, so we couldn't have like a tournament and then a varsity tournament and play at those sites. Gotcha.
So that was one reason why we had to play all of our matches away
Okay.
for volleyball.
Right,
So
because
I
of
had
regulation.
I had to get special permission to play the 5 district games. And they're basically under protest because we were not within regulation of a high school gym.
Yeah, I learned something, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, that's what we have here today, reviewing those 2 sheets. A lot of detail in the overall report there, looking at all the individual items that we identified. So we're available for any questions you guys may have about any of the facilities.
Did want to clarify for the board the gymnasium situations. So we've got a couple of challenges, a couple of problems we have to solve. One is obviously capacity in the game gym. You know, we all know that it's probably seating capacity wise a little small for a school our size. But the other issue is that we only have one real gym to compete in. You know, gym 2, we do have sub-varsity games in there, but we've got 5 little rows of bleachers on the one side. So we don't really have 2 competition gyms. Sub-varsity and a varsity competition gym that is adequate. So one proposed solution here the athletic park came up with was to build an actual competition gym, and then that would give us 2 competition gyms, and it would address the accessibility issues or challenges we have at the current game gym, as well as storage, as well as, there's no officials location, which technically we're supposed to have in the area for the officials to be able to get dressed in and that sort of thing. And then shower facilities for the coaches on the guy's side, they don't have any. So that's one option. The other would be, the other solution pathway would be to find a way to renovate or do something to Gym 2 if it was even optional, given its condition with lack of accessibility at the second, second level and all the things. But to create some additional seating there so it was more of an appropriate competition gym. So they're both dilemmas, the capacity and the not having two adequately outfitted competition gyms. But there's a couple of paths towards solving the problem. Of course, as Eric was mentioning, today's not really a master planning process yet. This is just a need finding process, and so the needs are pretty clear. Now the direction is whether it's time to start actually engaging more of a formal, master planning process. Like, in order to solve these problems, what would be the most efficient way to do that from a design standpoint? And then what would the projected cost of such look like? So that would be kind of the next phase, is to get into that a little bit more. And so as Eric also mentioned earlier, with some of this field house, locker room, weight room, coaches' offices kind of facility, there's a possibility that could solve several of the other challenges in one solution versus, renovating showers and restrooms and offices and multiple locker room facilities, which is kind of an extension of what we've always done. So again, that's really more of a design exercise. It's in the interest of master planning. So it's really getting a little more involved in what would solutions to these actually look like and what might these things cost.
My personal opinion, we need to move forward with the master plan, what you were just talking about. We've been overdue with that for years.
And at the end of March, possibly March, for sure by April, but looking more like March, we'll also have the demographic study coming in. I think we're actually gonna be able to get it in March, it's looking like. So we'll know what capacity needs look like as far as school facilities. And in the meantime, we could work on really taking a closer look at what solutions might look like here and what those costs might be. And, as those bits of data intersect, we can engage more formally the planning committee of our community to really digest all of this and begin to bring information back to the board as far as what the community perceives as well.
That's the problem.
Yeah. That's gonna be the sell, so my thing is business case plan, we're starting here, right, and getting all the other things, just all the information that we're gonna need. First step, this is good first step.
Yeah.
So I guess certainly a consideration and a goal, of course, too, is that we won't we have to revisit this in its totality in the near future, whatever that means, when we start looking at how, projecting how with our best estimate, how long these things have livability or ability to stay as safe as they can and to accomplish what we're trying to do. I guess my point is, I don't like Band-Aid approaches. If you're gonna do something and you wanna do it well and you wanna bring it up to code or whatever, you have to look at, are we gonna invest what we need to do now versus down the line where we can possibly project that we'll have to be revisiting part of this, and if you fix part of it, then you gotta fix the other part, that kind of thing. I mean, I'm not an expert in, of course, by no means with that, but I'm just thinking from a common sense perspective. And we know we're gonna have sports, and we know we're gonna have, this is gonna be used. So I guess, is there some kind of comparative where we can determine which is the best option by way of that? That's probably a better way to ask that, so help me with
Yeah,
that.
so you're thinking maybe just from a comparability standpoint, I mean, what is the standard we need to get to, and what might it look like in other schools
Yeah.
like ours in the area and around the state? Like, what are some of these solutions? What do they look like?
Yeah.
Right, like, if we're talking about a gymnasium, or we're talking about a press box and stadium renovation, like, what are we talking about? What does it need to rise to the level of, to meet all of the standards and be comparable, right? Is that kind of what you're asking? And the other thing is, I mean, I would just be, I think we all know from a financial perspective, this would be outside of the scope of our ability to cash finance all of this, right? These are pretty substantial, this would be a pretty substantial project program.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think any of us are against any of this. I think it's all something that we all want. The only thing I'm thinking in terms of, the funds are, it's hard to get a bond passed for educational buildings and purposes, let alone anything sports related. The maintenance and operation, the blue dots, is that anything that we can, like we did the bond, how we were able to work with some things out of the fund balances and prioritize them as far as what we can do with what we have, and then reach into the bond money for other things? Does that make sense? Like, it's
Yeah.
asking the community to pass a bond for things like this. That's why I was wanting to reach out to big businesses with anything, any packages we have. So the next step is the amounts, basically. because
Yeah,
then we're gonna have to
so
reach out to-
I think that probably the next thing would be to engage we have a pretty active facility study or planning committee of citizens.
Mhm.
I think re-engaging them in our next meeting with our current bond project program updates, which we already have scheduled with them, and also say, here's kind of a preliminary assessment of facilities, athletic facilities, at the high school and 2 middle schools, and here's kind of some of the concerns that have been brought forward. And in the meantime, work with LPA to start really thinking about conceptually what design solutions could look like, so that we can get a better sense of what is this really going to entail in terms of cost, potentially, right? Like, is this field house, is this stadium press box, is this a $4 million project? Is it a $24 million project? What are we talking about? And are there options within that to solve the problem appropriately from a design perspective, given the scope of this master plan and the amount of work? I
And
think
if we're gonna do it,
I think the board and the community would just have to get a
and we're gonna
sense
keep
of.
growing, we don't wanna have like a middle area, like we're here, and eventually we know we're gonna be big. Why don't we just go big?
Well, and along with master planning, you'd have to consider things like, well, how far out are we from a second high school? And if any of these facilities, would there be some of those that are district facilities
Yeah.
that both schools would share? So that would
Is that
inform them,
something that we would use this stadium as our main?
well,
probably,
that would be
maybe?
part of the master planning
Do
process.
we drop down from 6A with the new high school? Does that happen?
You could, it just depends on projected
Population.
enrollment. You know, I think the numbers are like 20, right now, it changes,
So,
what is it,
yeah,
20?
so right now you're at about 2,400 is where you're at B6A, and probably where the new high school might go in projections. This area, since we're so central, would probably always stay
Right.
right at about 6A. I don't think we can get under 2,400 here.
Out there either. I mean,
Yeah, I think if you just, I mean, last year's projections had the high school at 4,500 by 2029. Let's say it's 2,400 here, you're 2,100 there, you're at 6A, 5A, and a
So
year
we
or
might
two
have
away from
two.
both being 6A, right?
Yeah,
But again, facility master plan, master planning process is where you kind of think through all of those things. Is, if we build 2 stadiums, this would be the cost to the community. If we renovate one and share it, this would be the cost to the community.
right.
And there's other examples, Judson's been through this, and Cibolo's been through this, and Harlandale's been through this before us, so, I mean, there's other examples to kind of inform the planning process, but we haven't engaged in that.
So when they meet, their first meeting is just to go over this, it's not any funds or timelines or anything for the committee?
Well, we could have a little better sense
I
between
think it
now
should
and then,
happen
and,
with some,
that would be something we'd want to bring back to the board if it went down that road. It was just to kind of say, this
because they're gonna say yes.
is what some of the solutions are looking like.
Most of them have kids in the district and we see, just traveling to the different gyms and the different softball fields and things like that, it's crazy what we don't have for our kids. And I would think that anybody that saw this would not be against it at all. So if we
Yeah,
had more
we're
information.
gonna have to do a good job of sending it to the community. We're gonna have to make some comparisons with 6 other 6A schools, their facilities compared to our facilities. And we want to sell that to the community. And, you know, I mean, they're the ones that, gonna have to vote and pass this thing. We can just put all this out here,
Yeah.
but we have to, make them understand this is a 6A school. Our facilities, our kids deserve the same amount of what these other schools have, and show them a comparison of other schools. We're probably not even compared to, 2A, facility, you know what I'm talking about? So we have to do a good job of doing that, and then you got, and give it to them, if you want it, let's go, if you're not, you know, this is what.
Yeah, and I think generally that's exactly what we're
Yeah, I
talking
don't
about.
think,
Here's the
we
needs,
just back off it.
here's what our current condition
Yes.
is, you know, what is it that the community expects?
Yeah.
And that kind of drives the
And-
direction we'll
and-
head. And I think, to your point,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we all heard from the community quite a bit during the spring softball season last year when we were using Somerset's facility and Marion's facility, and when that, looking at those compared to ours, a much smaller school districts. We all certainly heard from our friends and neighbors in the community at those events,
Well,
didn't
and
we?
the kids too, they see it, and they say like, why can't we have this, or, you know, I don't wanna say how embarrassing, but kinda to them, to a child, it's embarrassing for them to welcome other teams in, and, I don't know. I'm not embarrassed, cause, you know, this is what we got, and we work well with what we have, all of the people in this district do that, but it's embarrassing.
I just want to apologize because I haven't been in any of these places, and I think we've been making a silk purse out of a salvia for a long time, is what it looks like to me. Wow, yeah, I'm sorry. That's a lot of damage here that they've been working around. And so not only is it not up to 6A quality, it's, these things are broken down and eroding, and, you know, point blank, it's probably majorly safety issues first and foremost, not to mention it's not pretty to look at. But I'd like to see, I'm with everybody else, if they'd like to see moving forward a plan, and I'd like to see the plan include what you said a few minutes ago, how will it look, or how will we be massaging everything around if we're considering a second high school. So along with the planning, I'd like to see that as a side list, you know what I mean? I'd like to look at it all
Yeah.
and
Okay.
kind of know, and then of course price-wise, and I don't know if there's a way that, like Coach was saying, we could see some comparisons of what other schools are using. Are those tubs outside?
Yes.
Are those normally things that are inside?
If you had a big enough training room or somewhere, but those, a lot of those are just your ice baths and stuff like that. One, it depends the time of the year, and two, if you, some schools that have bigger training rooms,
Yeah.
they keep them indoors.
So you really, those would like to be inside in a training facility where you do physical therapy and stuff like that?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So I'm with everybody else, if they would like to see a plan moving forward, and also in that plan, I'd like to see, take into consideration if there's gonna be another high school. So I'd like to see all of that side by side, along with some pictures of other things, and I'd also like to see some costs, you
We
know,
want
if
Dripping
that's,
Springs.
if that's available.
That would be great, Dripping Springs.
Yeah. What's that school?
I think the community will support it if it's done right, we promote it right. I mean, it's just like from the last bond, that was the bond before the last one we just did. I mean, that previous bond failed, and we made some improvements to that bond package. We were gonna spend $6 or $7 million on that, renovating that bus garage. We ended up with a whole new bus garage, which made more sense and actually, in the long run, saved money. And I think the community will understand that, see that, if they get access to
They need
this
to see this.
and educated on this.
In the plan, they need to see that.
Where, you know, spending money on renovating stuff or fixing stuff is, in my opinion, wasting money. I mean, there's a point in time where you have to get past that and start over, and I think we're well past that. I mean, that structure over there for the stadium was the same structure that I set my fat butt on playing trombone. I mean, structure-wise, they were wood at the time, they're aluminum now, but I mean, it's the same structure.
The press box was when y'all
And,
graduated.
you know,
It was brand new in
It's a
1982.
long time ago.
The press
Years
box was
and
82.
years.
Brand new in 82.
and then in the coaching field, new facilities recruits athletes and head coaches, I'm gonna tell you that.
Mhm.
I mean, athletes, that see this and that, coaches that see these facilities, I'm not saying nothing wrong with our coaches, but you could, some coaches come over and look at facilities, oh, no, I'm not, I'm going over here, you know what I mean? So you have to sell all that to them, that, you know, and even kids that are jumping from our middle schools, going to these other facilities, hey, man, they look at what we got over here, you know what I'm saying? So we got to sell a lot of stuff.
I think it's
to the
super
community.
commendable that our staff uses what we have. I mean, golly, you know, I think it's great. And it says, it's a testament to how amazing, the people are that we have that are willing to, you know, just accept, even though it's probably painful at times, that what we have. But I think it's, like Coach says, it's attractive in many, many ways
Right, of course,
for us to
of course.
have. So, yeah, I'm ready to move forward if everybody else is.
Are you adding anybody to the committee?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
So it'll be like same, that way they know how to function, but then add
More than
more
that.
sports kids, parents and stuff.
Yeah, I believe we had, I mean, just the athletic spring parent meeting, spring sports parent meeting, I think there were over 300 parents in the gym the other night.
Right.
In the cafeteria the other night. I
That's
mean,
right, yeah.
they had a lot of questions
Yeah,
about
Good deal.
much of this.
right.
All right.
So I think it's just a matter of, you know, making sure we're informing the community about what we found and discovered here, while at the same time thinking about what solutions could look like from a design perspective, and being able to then more estimate roughly what these solutions, you know, could cost. Because it's one thing to identify the problems, it's another thing to identify what
Yeah.
a very thoughtfully designed, intentional master plan would look like to solve these problems, and then what that would potentially look like in terms of cost.
The tennis facility, does that include lights on that bar court?
I mean, yeah, that's one of the things that has been identified prior and for a long time, but also the surfaces. The surface, I believe there's, as you mentioned, the players' locker room facilities, restroom facilities, visitors, you know, guest restroom facilities. There's also some issues with the stands, you know, we've covered them, but there's also areas where players are supposed to stage that isn't really what is at other facilities. And anyway, it just,
So basically, we're just gonna go off based on.
it needs a replacement and
Whatever it
some
is.
enhancements to bring it up to
Right.
plain standards. It includes lights, yes. Concession,
Right. And he mentioned, facilities in the locker room where the coaches can monitor them a little bit more. I mean, and and they need to be monitored. These kids have to be monitored every 5 minutes, every minute, excuse me, yeah, you know, so you can't see what they're doing in there, you know, then,
yes, I mean,
yeah,
it's,
it's hard.
this is, to Mo's point, they're doing the best they can with what they've got. The coaches using the locker rooms, a big part of the locker room, which is inadequate to begin with, for storing equipment. And then the restrooms are really not used by the kids, especially when we have guests, because that becomes the restroom guest
Yeah.
use. So it's not really like their athletic locker room, restrooms and showers. And it's not really like their own locker room, because it doubles as a storage room. And that's just the way they've been operating
Yeah,
since
that's-
we've had the
that's-
facility.
Just a lot of spots that don't work
Right.
anymore.
I mean, it's just, you know, beat it to fit it, I guess is.
Yeah, this is.
Silk purse out of a South Cedar.
She's showing that 1982 age.
It
Well,
is.
old people think,
Hey, hey, you know, I agree, and I think that, John was saying consolidate a lot of things, so.
Well, in that one, so I think number 2, you know, the list is long, but when you look at the list, we can consolidate in some areas. And number 2 would take care of quite a few things, especially all of our outdoor sports. I mean, basketball and volleyball, of course, will always have to be housed in your state, your competition gym. But everything else can be stored in that second bullet facility, which would also create, most importantly, I think, locker room space, also not just for all of our teams, but just for our coaches, to, you know, all of our coaches, as he said, these days you have males coaching a lot of our females, you know, sports, and our guys are having to go up into, you know, the second floor of gym 2 that are our basketball coaches for our girls, or our volleyball coaches, so they're nowhere near them, and they, you know, and just being able to have adequate changing areas, much less somewhere to shower, because they don't even have showers.
So that one is gonna be a
So-
new building?
Huh?
That one is gonna be a new building?
That would
So,
have to be a new
Do
construction.
we have an idea
But it
as
would
to
take
where
care
we're
of,
gonna
it
put that?
would consolidate quite a few of our
That's what I'd like to see.
Like, where would it be?
That's the next phase of the master planning process, so we've done, this is the sort of the first stage of that master planning, is understanding the needs. And I think if we proceed forward with this, the next stages include the benchmarking to other 6A schools through there, and then starting looking at the design solutions. I think looking at all the needs in there, it's not that hard to fathom. We could spend $200 million building all new, brand-new state-of-the-art facilities here across the district. Now, understand that's probably not reasonable for there. So part of that master planning effort is identifying where we get the most bang for our buck on those new facilities rather than, the extended Band-Aids I think were brought up. So identifying those, and that's really that design process. It may be, demolishing an existing building and building a new one in its place. It may be, converting a field to an indoor facility there. It's a process that'll involve a lot of the athletic stakeholders, the district, the entire community through there as well. That's sort of the process we'll go through. We've done many of these sort of master plans and understand that buying at every step of the way is really important, not only from people in this room, but the community at large. So we're not going to come in here and say you need a $100 million KD football stadium out here that seats 70,000 people. It's not the right solution for the district. So that's part of what understanding the master plan is finding the right solution for the district that can tackle as many of those issues in the document as effectively as possible.
Only the last point I'll make is just a reminder that per statute, if we find ourselves in an upcoming bond in the future, and this were to be included, athletic facilities were to be included, they have to be separate referendums. So the public would have the ability to decide if they wanted to support additional academic facilities to address growth and renovations and additions to athletic facilities, one or the other, or neither. They can't be co-mingled. Once upon a time, bonds could be co-mingled.
Coach,
So
what
are
was
you
that
saying that
gentleman
we
saying
would,
about
sorry, would you go
the stadium,
for
if it
a,
was over a certain amount?
it would be a bond that's done high school and I mean, we do it all in one separate.
Yeah, now, if you're building a new school, those athletic
We
facilities.
go with that,
are-
that's right, that's right. So that's the way to. Well, unless, do we have to, say or?
Well,
what?
I think the marching orders are pretty clear. You guys want us to engage in more of a formalized master planning process, kind of get into the next phase, and bring back some information to the board to kind of understand a little more clearly, and we'll also, subsequent to that, engage the planning committee and get your thoughts about how big, how many additional people we want to invite, because we definitely want a broad range of perspectives to internalize this and to inform that master planning process. So
Absolutely.
that's the road we'll start heading down.
Thank you for all that. And
Yes, thank you.
everybody else that
I-
contributed all this
We probably
information.
have pictures of most of these, but.
I bet you do. All right, so
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Eric.
Glad to be part of it.
The girls varsity has a game at 7:00, if y'all feel like going over to the gym.
Scooter built that
Big
big.
basketball
You
game.
get to go see that.
Randy
merchandise
Brown.
stand that Scooter built.
Oh, do you finish it? Wow, that's fast.
All right, we'll move on to item 6, adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
Aye.